Hey everyone, my name is Milagro Morrison, and today I will be presenting the first part of our behavior intervention plan, which focuses on reducing procrastination in college students. Procrastination is something that a lot of college students experience, especially when they are managing multiple responsibilities like classes, assignments, work, and personal life. Because of this, it becomes really important to understand not just what procrastination looks like, but also why it happens and how we can effectively reduce it using behavior analytic strategies. In this presentation, we will be going over the identification of the problem behavior, the ethical considerations we took into account, and a brief summary of the research that supports our intervention. These components are important because they provide the foundation for the rest of the intervention plan. In this section, we identified the target behavior as procrastination, which refers to a delay in task initiation. More specifically, procrastination is defined as the latency between the planned start time of an academic task and when the individual actually begins the task. So instead of looking at how often procrastination happens, we're focusing on how long the delay is before starting. For example, if a student plans to start studying at 6 p.m. but actually begins at 6:20 p.m., that 20-minute delay would be considered the latency. This behavior typically occurs when students are forced with academic demands, specifically tasks that are perceived as difficult, overwhelming, or non-preferred. In many cases, students may engage in other behaviors instead, such as using their phone, watching videos, or doing unrelated activities. According to our report, this behavior is specifically relevant because it negatively impacts productivity, academic performance, and can also increase stress level in students. That is the reason why this behavior was selected. It has strong social academic significance, and reducing it can lead to meaningful improvements in overall functioning. When selecting this behavior and developing the intervention, we considered several ethical factors to ensure the process is both effective and appropriate. First, all procedures are reinforcement-based and avoid the use of punishment. This is important because reinforcement-based strategies are less intrusive and more supportive of long-term behavior change. We also prioritize maintaining the participants' autonomy, dignity, and confidentiality throughout the entire process. This means that participants are respected, their information is protected, and they are not forced into any procedures. Additionally, informed consent is obtained before implementing any intervention. This ensures that participants are fully aware of what the intervention involves and agree to participate voluntarily. We also considered potential barriers, such as the accuracy of self-monitoring and environmental distractions like phones or social media. These factors are important because they can affect how well the intervention works, so they need to be addressed in advance. Overall, ethical considerations play a key role in making sure that the intervention is not only effective but also responsible and aligned with behavior analytic standards. In terms of research, multiple studies support the use of self-monitoring and reinforcement-based strategies to reduce procrastination. For example, research has shown that self-monitoring can increase awareness of behavior, which often leads to improved task engagement and consistency. When individuals track their own behavior, they become more aware of their patterns and that they're more likely to make changes. Additionally, reinforcement-based interventions have been found to effectively reduce avoidance behavior and increase task initiation. By providing a reward or positive outcome after starting a task, the likelihood of that behavior happening again increases. The literature also supports the use of structured and function-based interventions. This means that instead of using general strategies, the intervention is aligned based on the specific reasons why the behavior is occurring. In our case, procrastination is often maintained by escape from difficult tasks and access to more immediate reinforcement, like phone use. Because of this, the strategies we selected directly target those factors. Overall, the research strongly supports the use of this type of interventions, making them appropriate and evidence-based for reducing procrastination in college students.
Hi, my name is Barbara Perez, and in this behavior assessment, the target behavior I focused on was procrastination, which is defined as the delay in starting a task or latency to task initiation. I selected this behavior, or we selected it as a team, because it was a significant impact on the academic engagement, productivity, and overall stress levels. Rather than just describing the behavior, the assessment focused on understanding why the delay occurs. To do this, data was collected in a natural study environment, so the pattern observed was reflected on real-life behaviors. A function-based approach that was used to guide the assessment, meaning the goal was to identify the underlying reason for procrastination, so the future intervention can be evidence-based and effective. Overall, this approach helps ensure that the strategies used to reduce procrastination and targeted are meaningful. In this behavior assessment, the rationale for selecting this approach was to identify the functional variables that are controlling the target behavior. Rather than just making assumptions about why the behavior occurred, the focus was placed on understanding observable and measurable patterns. This was important because it allows for a more accurate and objective understanding of the behavior, which in this case is procrastination, defined as delayed in task initiation. To support the assessment, several tools were used to collect data in real-world settings. This included smartphone screen time, tracking applications which helped monitor actual usage patterns, as well as daily self-monitoring logs, where the individual recorded study behaviors and task initiation throughout the day. Using multiple tools allowed the data, meaning the information about different sources, could be compared to improve accuracy and reliability of the findings. The assessment also captured key environmental and behavior factors. This included antecedents, such as periods of free time, of notifications that may trigger distractions, as well as reinforcing outcomes such as increased engagement in other activities or escape from academic tasks. Overall, the function-based assessment approach helps ensure that the future interventions are guided by evidence and are more likely to be effectively addressed that the root causes of procrastination. From the baseline data, we can see that Perez and Lorena both showed consistency in high task initiation, latency, and averaging between 20 to 24 minutes. This pattern suggests stable procrastination with little natural improvement over time. Milagro, on the other hand, started with similar latency levels but shows a noticeable decrease in later sessions. However, since no intervention was introduced, this change is likely due to reactivity or environmental factors rather than actual treatment effects. Overall, the baseline data confirms that procrastination is presented at moderate or high levels across participants, indicating a clear need for intervention. In this section, the function of procrastination was analyzed based on the assessment findings. The results suggested that procrastination is primarily maintained by escape from academic demands. In other words, when task requires high effort or feels more demanding, there is an increased likelihood that the task initiation is delayed. Another important factor identified was the presence of an immediate reinforcement, particularly phone use and other easy accessible distractions. These competent reinforcers appear to reduce the likelihood of engaging in academic activities. as they provide quicker and more rewarding alternatives in the moment. For Milagro, the data also showed a decline in procrastination during later sessions. This suggested that the contextual variables such as time of day, environmental, or changing motivation levels may also influence the behavior. Because of this, it is important that these factors are considered when designing interventions. Overall, these findings indicate that procrastination is not random, but it is influenced by both task-related demands and environmental reinforcements. Therefore, effective intervention should focus on reducing task avoidance while also strengthening task initiation behaviors so the starting task becomes more manageable and consistent over time. In this section, the treatment package was developed based on the results of the behavioral assessment. A self-management intervention was designed to target both the triggers and the consequences, maintaining the behavior. The intervention primarily focused on reducing immediate access to social media, as well as increasing awareness of usage pattern. This was important because part of the problem behavior was driven by automatic or habitual use of the phone, especially during times that should be dedicated to academic tasks. To address this, the intervention was introduced systematically across participants, which allowed for a clear evaluation of its effect and ensured that changes in behavior could be accurately measured over time. The target outcome of the intervention was to reduce daily phone or social media use to 60 minutes or less. Each component of the treatment was designed to directly address the factor identified in the assessment, including both environmental triggers and reinforcing consequences. Overall, this ensured that the treatment was function-based rather than generalized, meaning it was specifically tailored to the variables maintaining the behavior, increasing the likelihood of meaningful and lasting behavior changes. In this intervention, strategies were used to address procrastination through antecedents, interventions, consequence strategy, and replacement behavior. Antecedents intervention included a breaking task into similar steps to reduce effort-related avoidance, along with structured schedules and a clear start clues to help prompt task initiation. Consequences strategies involving providing immediate reinforcements where tasks were started within a target time. This increased the likelihood of quicker task engagement, and reinforcement was later reduced to support independence. The replacement behavior was initiated task within 5 minutes of the scheduled start time, which directed competent with procrastination and provides and improves academic outcome. Overall, the intervention targets both triggers and consequences, strengthening behavior changes and supporting long-term improvement.
Hello, my name is Lorena Valladares, and let's talk about analysis of baseline and treatment data. As you can see on this slide, I'm looking at the graph across all participants. The main thing we measured here was latency to task initiation, because the issue wasn't how often they procrastinate, but how long they took to actually start the task. During baseline, like it shows here, latency was stay high around to 18 to 25 minutes, and there really wasn't any improvement over time. You can also see there's a big variability, but overall the behavior stayed stable and didn't get better on its own. Then, when the intervention was introduced, there is where we start to see a clear change. Latency begins to decrease across all participants, and the trends move downward, which means they start taking faster over time. Also, as shown in the slide, variability goes down. So, not only are they improving, but they are becoming more consistent. Another important thing is that there's a big overlap between baseline and intervention, which is a strong indicator that the treatment was effective. So overall, based on what we see in the graph, the intervention worked, and it also suggests a functional relationship between the treatment and the decrease in procrastination. For generalization, like it says here, the goal was to make sure the behavior wasn't just happening in one situation. So the intervention was used across different subjects, different settings, and even different times of the day. We also use common cues like timers and schedule. So no matter where the person was, these cues will help signal when to start the task. Another thing measured here is exposure to different task difficulties, because procrastination usually happens more than harder tasks. So practicing across different levels help make the behavior more flexible. We also include peers of study partner, which adds another layer because now the behavior can generalize across different peoples as well. For maintenance, reinforcement was gradually fade over time. At the beginning, it was more consistent, but in participant improvement, it became less frequent. At that point, more nature reinforcement, like finished tasks and feeling less stress, started to maintain the behavior. And self-monitoring continues, so participants stay aware of their progress. And we also include periodic check-ins to make sure the behavior didn't go back. And our last part of the project is future directions. One way to improve this intervention would be to extend the duration of the study, so we can study better understand long-term effects. Also, including more participants will help increase generalization and make the result stronger. Another improvement would be using more object and automated ways to track data, since right now it's based on self-report. And we could also extend this into group-based intervention to make it more efficient while being still effective. Now, in terms of limitation, one major issue was the short duration of the study, which made it harder to evaluate long-term outcomes. Another limitation is the use of self-reported data, which may not always be completely accurate. Environmental distraction like phones and social media also played a role and could have affected performance. And finally, there wasn't enough time to really access long-term maintenance of generalization across these different contexts. But overall, even with this limitation, the intervention still showed strong results and reducing procrastination. So it will be all. Thank you.